Good weather.
What's the temperature there?
40s. Almost all the snow is gone, but not all of it.
So what's your relationship to Sharon?
Sharon,
Oh, it's cutting out.
which Sharon?
Sharon Langahog.
I don't have any relationship that I'm aware of.
Oh, I see. She's in another box down below. I was putting your name below. Yeah, I see. Sorry.
Okay.
How's weather in your neck of the woods, Bernie?
Today we're getting some rain. It's not raining right now, but it's probably in the mid-50s. That would be fairly typical for here. Let me check here, see what the weather says. Might be upper 50s.
It looks like Bernie, Becky, and Jeff have
Hey,
got,
there he is.
for some reason,
Yep.
I don't have this video there.
'59.
It's not bad. So Paul, you able to control the meeting?
Meeting.
There you go. There we see him.
All right. I'm on finally. It's almost Becky, Bernie, and
Hi.
Jeff are on. Mike is there. Sharon, you've got your microphone on.
Yep, I'm here.
Okay. Becky, I think we can hear.
Okay.
Please start.
All right. We'll jump
I
right
had
in.
trouble getting anything to come up on my screen.
You're not saying anything, Sharon?
Well, yeah, I am saying something. I've been working for about half an hour trying to get on the screen. I see my name is up there, but
Well,
least you-
nobody's showing their screen yet, so
oh, okay. Well, I see you guys. I don't know what I got to do.
I think just stand by. I think it'll resolve itself.
Okay. Okay.
Becky, go ahead if you like.
Okay. So thank you so much for having me. My
Thank
name
you.
is Becky Leonard. I think you all got my bio. And right now I'll be speaking as the president of the Rolette County Historical Society. And Paul had asked that, we talk a little bit about the history of Rolette County, but I've watched all of the saved video, and I'm just going to try to fill in a little bit about what we haven't already heard and get into a little bit more about how, your reunion when you come to Rolette County, what it is that you're going to want to know and what is still in existence to what to see. And so my favorite book that's available is The History of Rolette County. I don't know if y'all can see it in front of me, by Laura Thompson Law. And when we first started, looking at interpretation for our panels that we have along the Turtle Mountain Scenic Byway, we did get permission from the Law family, because this is a copyright volume, to take excerpts from her book. And my favorite is in her introduction. She says, "More interesting than a fairy tale is the story of the development of the Great Northwest. It is a story of adventure and daring in the lives of hardy pioneers. Some of the rare legends which have been handed down are included in this book for their interest and historical value." So her writings are, based upon some research, but not in detail. But she does have quite a few stories that are, it's not something you're going to find in a history book. And that's why I find fascinating all of those types of stories that come down. They all have a basis in fact. My next one that I enjoyed was the history of Rolette, and this is the 1980 version. And that is a nice little brief synopsis of the history of the county as well. And again, when you're seeking out it, and for me, doing genealogical research, these are items that I have easily at my disposal, but aside from a few, you're not going to find them on, say, the North Dakota Digital Horizons page, or it's a website. And that too is very nice. The most recent Rolette County history books for Dunseith, Rolette, Rolla are all there. And it's a fairly searchable site. So I won't go into great depth on those books, but we do at the Rolla Kiwanis Club, back when Kevin Law was the president, we did a reprint of the Laura Thompson Law book, and we only have 4 of those available. And at various times, we've had interest from folks, you know, to fund a new printing of that book, which the Law family was interested in doing, but it is quite an expensive adventure. And I haven't heard any more on it for several months, but it's something to think about when you're here, that those items are available. Usually the Rolla Library has theirs available. At Rolette County Historical Society in St. John, at our museum site, we did have a library area. Unfortunately, this past winter, the tin, it's a pole barn style building, and the tin on the roof blew up in the winter, depositing snow, of course, right over the library area. So we've been going through all of those volumes and different pieces that we have there to see what is salvageable and what is not. And we are developing a new library area where the possibility is lesser that we'd have that kind of thing. But again, you just never know with print material. The other book that is quite good is The History of St. John. That is not online. We do have several copies of this available for sale. It is a fundraiser for the Historical Society. And they're, with St. John being the oldest community in Rolette County, they do go into great detail in 1982 about the history prior to settlement. And that, again, helps a lot in doing any kind of research to the history. The other 2 that I have in St. John at the Museum Library is The History of Milo as well. That was done in 2005 by Larry Schell, who has since passed. And so that's quite a nice reference. The other that I find fun is North Dakota Places and Names. And so this one is still available at your favorite bookstore. So have I gone too fast? And I can be interrupted at any time if anybody has questions.
Let me interrupt. I think we have Laura Thompson Law's book on our website.
Do you?
Yes.
Well, hopefully
Yeah.
you got permission.
2026. Yeah. I know I've got a copy right online.
Good. Well, I know it is a copyright material, and so I don't know what's been happening recently.
I'll make sure that gets circulated after the meeting.
Right. And then again, it's just a matter of asking the family to be able to take from that in print form. The other part that I had hoped to have had was Cade Ferris, who is from Turtle Mountain, and he was integral into the history of the Métis people. And we lost him on November 4th to an aggressive cancer. So I know he was excited about the opportunity to join us today, but unfortunately, I'm left to try to talk about that a little bit because I know
Becky,
that.
yeah, Becky, why don't you just give us a quick oral summary of the Métis in Rolette County? I think that'd be helpful.
The Métis now are recognized in Manitoba or particularly all of Canada as a separate Indigenous people. So I know that you've had John Shaw and Les LaFountain speak on the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa. However, the Métis are not distinguished in North America, in North Dakota, or the United States for that matter. And so we've had quite a bit of interest now because of the change in the status in Canada, as far as following the Métis into, well, from North Dakota at Pembina to the Red Lake area on Lake Winnipeg, and then following Father Malo to St. John or St. Claude, which is north of St. John. And that's all covered in the St. John history book. With that said, there are quite a few Facebook pages dedicated to Métis families, and they do an excellent job of telling that story. One of Cade Ferris's books is available on Amazon, and so this is a narrative of captivity and adventures of John Tanner during 30 years residence among the Indians of the interior of North America. It's really fascinating. I was reading while I was waiting for us to get on here today. And then there are 6 publications of his that I'll let you take a look at. Is there any questions right now that anyone has about the Métis in particular?
Are they recognized First People in Canada?
Yes, they are. And that was just recent.
Is there still an effort, do you know, Becky, on the Turtle Mountain Reservation to make a distinction between the Métis and the Chippewa purebloods? I had a feeling there was not an effort to do that anymore.
There is not. On my husband's particular side of the family, they are Métis in Canada. They're eligible for a Métis card, and yet in North Dakota, they are not members of the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa. It's my understanding that there's a line of descendancy with the newly recognized tribe in Montana, the Little Shell, Pembina Little Shell Band. And I know Les referenced them as well.
Well, Becky, can you tell us the start of Rolette County, how it got started, where, and the main points in its history?
Those again, I go back to my reference book because there's just some things that you need to get into as far as when the area was settled. Now from Laura Thompson Law, she starts with, you know, Great Britain and goes all the way through all of that history. And so that's why I struggle with, you know, which particular part. Are you talking about when it was thrown open to homesteading and that type of activity? You mean
What's the knowledge of the first coming of any humans? How that goes back? What do we know about the original humans that came here thousands of years ago? Do we know much about that?
Okay. The St. John history book talks about that Indian relics were found in many areas. But again, the artifacts and implements and those types of things, we talk about 200 years of various peoples who were in the area. We talk about, you know, as far as some of our interesting topics have been after the glacier and, you know, the Greater Lake Agassiz and the mound builder people and, you know, how the area may have been occupied. Those are all interesting. There are many, many different stories that are told. And that's why I really encourage everyone to, you know, get a hold of the information. And so, you know, we talked about then the fur trappers and the traders coming into the area. And again, the coming of the Catholic missionaries and, you know, those types of stories, they're all laid out in these books to one extent.
Do I understand, Becky, that the Turtle Mountain area
Mhm.
was a very popular site for the summer hunters to come from the east to hunt for the buffalo, but they were not any long-term permanent 12-month locations until the middle 1800s. Is that true?
Well, when you talk about settlements, there have been trading posts identified in St. John, where the town now is, in 1845.
Okay,
So
okay.
there have been people here, just not in large numbers. So when you talk about the Métis or the Ojibwa with their buffalo hunting, that's a different type of activity than the trappers or the traders.
Right.
And one of my favorite stories, and I'll have to find that again, is where the Turtle Mountains was in the early days told that it was a hideout for renegades and that nobody came to Turtle Mountain to settle because of that. And so that's an interesting little tidbit.
Yes, right. So the trappers and then the trading post in 1845 was probably then the beginning of what ultimately led to permanent settlement, both by the Ojibwe and the immigrants.
Correct. There are stories of the Ojibwe staying in the area, and they were here to welcome the Métis. And then I also shared a family story of the Barassa family, and we have notes from the 1882 immigration, and they were French. And in that story, they have told of all the struggles and everything, but they give an insight into the attitudes of the people here, where the Métis were not appreciated and they were not identified as Indigenous. There were the Ojibwe people, the Cree people, and then there were the Métis, and then there were the French settlers. And so all of a sudden you've got a mix, or, you know, the great melting pot, so to speak, right in that area of the Turtle Mountains. So then again, you know, how they settled and where they settled in groups and families. With the Métis were largely with a family group. When the French came, they also came as family groups, but they were separate. So
Was Belcourt started as an Ojibwe community?
it was after the identification of the reservation boundaries.
Okay.
So it would be,
What year was that?
yes, that would be where Belcourt became that central. It was a trading post,
Okay.
but it was.
That 1892? Is that what that year that was?
Believe so, yes. And
Okay.
there were a large group of Native Americans
But
identified.
the first French immigrants came 10 years earlier than that, didn't they, in
They
1882?
came in 1882, yes.
Yeah, the first one. Are there any buildings left from the early settlements of 1882? Or what is the oldest building in Rolette County?
We don't have any of those types of buildings left. It would be after settler era. And so,
Okay.
again, they weren't permanent settlements, so to speak. So when you get into the formation of cities, then you have certain buildings that are older. St.
Sure.
John, the Martineau House would be the oldest house on Main Street existing, and that was not built until the late 1890s.
If we could say to the visitors to come to Rolette County, why don't you list for us the major historical sites that people ought to emphasize when they visit Rolette County? I come to St. John. What should I look for?
When you come to Rolette County and what you look for?
Yeah.
Well, the museum obviously is a good place to start if we
The
have.
museum is in St. John.
Is in St. John.
All right.
So north of St. John is the St. Claude Historic Site. That
Oh,
is
St.
where-
Claude Historic Site. Okay.
Yes, and we're
St. Claude
working-
was the first settlement.
St. Claude was the first settlement by Father Mallow, bringing
Okay,
immigrants
okay.
to North Dakota.
Okay.
And so we're working with the State Historical Society, who owns that site, to get a new interpretive panel installed. And so
Okay.
hopefully next year that'll be there for you to enjoy for your reunion. Then
Okay.
when you come into St. John, of course, there is Martineau House. That is a visitor center. It's the oldest, like I said, the oldest house on Main Street. And
Perfect.
that is separate from the museum site. In the
Okay.
museum site, we have two, well, it's now one large pole barn building that houses artifacts. There is a early Lutheran church on the grounds that was moved in from by Lake Upsilon west of St. John. There is a schoolhouse that is quite early, and that was moved in from Lake Upsilon as well. We have from Dana Wright, who was a famous North Dakota historian. He had built, well, a site along the Diane Lake shores when he owned that property, and he took a historic barn and they actually skidded it about 1.5 miles to the shores of Diane Lake for him to have a cabin. And we have moved that into the grounds. So that's there. And that would be,
St. John is absolutely the starting point then.
yes, if you're looking for history, early history.
Yeah.
The Heritage Center in Belcourt, of course, is,
Yeah.
very, very good as well. It's by the casino. And
That's a heritage site is at the casino, is it not?
it is at the casino, yes.
Yes, okay. And then there also this machinery thing down by Milo.
Yeah, the Hawk Foundation has the Hawk Museum, and
Uh-huh.
that is a private museum, and it's got a lot of the early farm equipment to North Dakota on display, and many of them are running. They have many activities during the Hawk Museum days. That's usually the first weekend in June.
Uh-huh.
So it's very good. And they do have a lot of artifacts that are not housed in St. John from the Milo area, from Rolette and Wolford.
Okay, so that would be a good spot as well.
That's
So
also
Milo,
very good.
Hawk Museum. What about in Dunseith? Is there historical sites in Dunseith?
There are not a lot identified. Dunseith, you have the log house, which is a visitor center. But with Dunseith, the round barn, the Cody Round Barn is a nice site, but that's on private property as well.
Okay,
And
so anyway,
north of
we're
Rolla,
talking about St. John, Belcourt, the casino, the Heritage Center, the Hawk Museum, a little bit in Dunseith. Now, should we go outside the county to Rugby and Bottineau for some other stuff that could be regarded as relevant?
well, don't forget to drive by the Coghlan Castle so that you can see that historic property that is a fieldstone mansion. It's north of Rolla, between Rolla and St. John.
Oh, okay, there's a mansion and a between Rolla and St. John.
right.
Okay,
But that again is on private property, so.
okay.
Then don't
There
forget
will be- Yeah,
the Kerr building in Rolette, which is owned by the Historical Society. That is a preserved for its significance to Rolette County in telling the railroad era story. That is the building that was moved from Macomber to Rolette. That
yes.
still exists.
Okay, that's very good. And I've been in that building when it was a Red Owl store. I've been in it when it was a funeral home. So I know exactly where it is.
Yeah, and
Okay.
right now, we're trying to raise funds to fix the floor in it so that we can put in more displays. And there's just so many things that are in storage now that could easily be displayed there. But
Okay.
first things first, you can only rise from the ashes a couple times and then
Sure. Sure.
but it
Right.
has a new roof and it's
So
still
there's really several places within the boundaries of Rolette County that tourists coming wanting to learn more about the county will be able have to tell them about those locations that we
right.
talked about
And
here. So
our
that
most
and
recent acquisition.
and have a map probably. But what about the Rugby town site there? That's on the south side of Highway 2. That seems to be quite a place.
It's very much a large museum. There are some things from Rolette County that are there,
Oh,
rightfully
okay.
or not. And so you have to remember with the Rolette County Historical Society, we weren't formed until 1974. And so at that time, we just collected what was available. Most everything, like with Dana Wright, he had everything taken to Bismarck. So, if you're looking for specific things that may still exist and you can see, you'd be prepared to spend many days at the Heritage Center in Bismarck. Again, don't forget about the International Peace Garden.
Right.
And then
What about Botno?
Pardon?
Botno. What about the city of Botno?
Botno has a museum as well. And so we know that there are a lot of stories because, in history, nobody really recognized boundaries, including Manitoba. So I would, if you're interested, go to Boissevain and Killarney are also very interesting sites. And one thing that I noticed wasn't spoken of is the significance of the Great Northern Railroad and the spur from Church's Ferry to St. John that did cross to Brandon in Manitoba.
Oh, it did. It went all the way to Brandon.
Yes, it did. And St. John is an immigration site. Well, it still is, but we do have on the grounds at the museum the original immigration station that was on the rail bed. And we'd also have the existing rail bed within our museum grounds and a boxcar and a caboose.
When did the railroad from Church's Ferry reach St. John?
1887.
1887. Did that precede the spur from Rugby up to Botno?
Yes.
Oh, it did.
Yes.
Okay.
So
I got a question. Why is the county seat Rolla instead of Rolette?
county seat wars. And those, again, in every book that you're going to read, we can talk about. The first one was between Dunseith and St. John and all of the shenanigans that occurred during that era. And then there was another county seat war between, once St. John won that, Rolla and St. John then had a war. And in Rolla, I happen to own the oldest storefront on Main Street of Rolla. And that was built by an early immigrant to St. John, and he had a store there. And after the county seat war, he could see the handwriting on the wall. So he came to Rolla, and in 1891, he built this building that I have restored. And so, again, that is quite interesting. Then there was another county seat war between Rolette and Rolla. And so it's always been an interesting
That
political
was in
community.
1919, wasn't it, when that war took place?
Yes,
They
yes.
had an election, I believe,
They were all by election.
all by election.
Yes.
So first one was between Dunseith and St. John, the second one between St. John and Rolla, and the third one between Rolla and Rolette.
Yep. The only one that never challenged was Milo.
Oh, okay. Okay. Milo, is not much left of Milo today.
No, there's still some pretty nice old buildings to see.
Okay.
On your way to the Hawk Museum, you can
Actually,
just.
as we think about preparation for 2026, clearly our visit here today indicates the importance of our developing some kind of a list for people, a brochure, and I'm sure we can turn to you for good help on putting together. So if you've got 2 days
Interesting.
to travel around, here's where you would like to go, and here are the roads to take.
We did do a publication. It's called More Interesting Than a Fairy Tale, and it is a guide to all the historic sites in the Turtle Mountain region. So that included Manitoba and North Dakota. And we are out of those now at the Visitors Center.
By
And
the way, doesn't the Foster County Independent have a publication about Rolette County Historical Societies?
it is actually, it's the New Rockford transcript.
Okay.
And
That
we were,
reveals my parochial nature because I'm from Carrington.
oh, gotcha.
Transcript, okay.
But they were the publisher of our various media. We have brochures. And again, it's all good stuff. But, you know, back when we were doing that, all of a sudden they told us print was going to be dead. So I'm going to try to scan that More Interesting Than a Fairy Tale booklet and make it available on our Facebook page, which is History and Memories of Rolette County.
Tell a group about your Facebook page, because it's a very well done thing that you have prepared.
Okay. Tucker Bursey, who is a now college student, as a senior in high school at the Belcourt schools, he became interested in what we were doing. And it was at his suggestion that we do a Facebook page, because that's a medium that's fairly easy to share photos and stories on. And so we just went ahead and said, yep, let's go ahead and do that. And it's remarkable with, you know, what is being shared and, you know, different types of aspects of the county history that I wasn't aware of even. So it's
That's
a fun
terrific.
thing.
When we have our summary, Becky, we'll put in there how to get to that Facebook page so people can get to it easily. Very good.
Yep. And we're hoping to keep it up and going.
Excellent. Other comments from others on the group here? I've been dominating. I apologize, but that's my nature, I guess. Michael, Mike Oyseth has been listening, and he's got that nice looking beard and mustache that makes him look very distinguished. Mike, why don't you tell the group what you have been doing in terms of the residents of Rolette County?
Well, my roots are Norwegian, and some of my relatives, rather distant ones, but they are blood related people, were early settlers in Rolette. They were the Beaver family. Garina and her sons and a daughter came by 1885. They were in the Dakota territorial census, and also a sister of Garina, Ingeborg Christine, who married Charlie Martin. They came over from Becker County, Minnesota, and settled in Rolette County also by 1885. And then Andrew Beaver, who was Garina's son, came in 1886. So I've had an interest in the county and, you know, what kind of a place it is and who lived there and whatnot. I have been doing research on all of the Norwegian born residents in 1885 in that Dakota County or Dakota Territory census. And also I have looked at the 1900 census, federal census, all the Norwegians in that bunch. And I've been trying to trace every one of them back to Norway, to where they came from, and learn about when they emigrated and something about what went on in the interval between their immigration to the US and their settlement in Rolette County. And it's interesting how much can be found today. Now, I've been at genealogy for about 40 years. And I must say that now tackling another county to research has been quite an eye-opener to me as to how much genealogy has become a way of life for a lot of people. And there are family trees all over the place, and there's a lot of coverage of so many people that you can get on the internet and use the resources there, as well as the Norwegian resources, and learn a great deal about people who were living here, way back in 1885 and 1900 and so on.
Well, that's good, Michael. I think I'd like you to continue to think about how you might share some of that information with the Zoom sessions. We could set one aside for you in the future to discuss that. Becky, back on you. You mentioned that you are a fifth generation resident of Rolette County. So you had a great great grandfather or grandmother that came to Rolette County?
Yes, that name was Stritzel, and they came, from Germany, obviously. And so there they came through Ellis Island to Ohio, I believe, and then to Rolla. And then when the Turtle Mountains were thrown open to homesteading, that would be when my great grandfather did homestead, and it's 6 miles east of the Peace Garden. And so we've been there since.
Oh, be switched. So you grew up right on the Peace Garden border there, didn't you? Almost. Okay.
Almost, except for my dad was a teacher. And so when he and my mother met at what's now Dakota College at Botno, or the former State School of Forestry, then he went after the Korean War, got his teaching degree at Valley City State, and we moved to several towns, and I spent 10 years in Walhalla. So my formative years were in Walhalla, and we spent summers with my grandparents at east of the Peace Garden. So
Bernie, you've got your red light on there that you're not hooked in. Bernie, I'd like to ask you to share a little bit about your interest in Botno, because a lot of your Bakken family went to Botno after later on, after having originally been in Rolette County.
Yeah, I was always told from my grandmother, whose maiden name was Lena Bakken, and she was born in that area in I think 1890, and I believe her parents, her father Torger Bakken, I don't know if he was there by 1885. I've read some oral history.
Yes, he was. Yeah.
Well, sometime in that time frame, I think, in the mid 1880s, he came there. But when I went back there a couple of years ago and met with another relative, a second cousin, who lives in Botno, and he took me to the Bakken farm, which is really just a few miles north of, I think maybe a couple miles north of Rolette. So I'm not, if she grew up on that farm, I think she was probably closer to Rolette than Botno.
Yes, I think that's correct.
My cousin,
Shell Valley Township, right north of Leonard. Yes.
Yeah, it's not too far from Rolette, I don't believe. And then there's a cemetery in that same area where my great grandfather T.K. Bakken, he's buried.
Yes,
So I'm not sure what the connection is to Bottineau.
okay. Anyway,
But-
you've got family there. Jeff Epping, your grandfather settled just north of Rolette,
Right. Yes, yeah, in
about
probably
1887.
3 miles north. Yeah,
Okay, about 1887.
yeah, that been about right.
Yeah, and your grandfather and my grandfather were very close.
Yeah.
Sharon Langhaug, you have a connection through your husband and his relationship to one of the early pastors there, don't you?
Yes, yes. Now, my mother was Anna Christensen, and she married my father, and they lived in the Turtle Mountains,
Okay,
north of Bottineau, near Lake Metagoshi.
okay, all right. By the
And
way, Becky, back on your role here, what kind of, if you were to summarize the connection between the residents of the Turtle Mountain Reservation and the immigrants from Europe over the years, is it closer today than it used to be, or is it, how would you characterize it?
I don't really know that anything is different anywhere you go. So
Uh-huh.
my family, on my dad's side are Bohemian. And so they settled in Walsh County, and there's nobody left there. So in that respect, Rolette County has been able to retain a population, and everybody has coexisted for hundreds of years. And, as with all families, there's always some kind of, different thing going on, but I would just characterize it as that Rolette County is one family. And there are very, very many branches, and how that all works together is a mystery.
Sure.
I've been looking at the St. John history book, the city City at the End of the Rainbow,
Yeah.
as it is the title of it.
Right.
And in that you can learn that quite a number of the families up there near the Turtle Mountain reservation have intermarried with non-Indian people who came later, some of whom happen to have been Norwegian and
That's
some
correct.
other.
And my husband's sitting here, and I'll mention, Michael, that his grandmother's name was Overby, but in Norway it was Chris Johnson, and they came here during the Depression era. A lot of people came to the Turtle Mountains during the Depression because the water was still plentiful, and there was the shade, and we didn't have the dust storms and those types of things. So there were a lot of squatters within the Turtle Mountains, which makes it interesting genealogy because you can't link them to any land, but the Turtle Mountain Star newspaper archives are quite good, and those are online. But also, if you want to go to the State Historical Society and have them do newspaper lookups, that's quite interesting too.
Yes.
Go
I
ahead.
read that a number of the Norwegians that first settled in Rolette County were uncomfortable with the flat land and treelessness and so on. So they wanted to move into the Turtle Mountains, and some did. They relocated, they sold off their place and moved up into the Turtle Mountains because they wanted to be in hilly country with trees.
That's correct.
Interesting. Becky, on the matter of Chester A. Arthur's role in the size of the reservation, 1882, he declares some 20 townships, the bulk of the county, except for the eastern tier of townships. In 1884, he changes his mind and cuts it back to 2. Do you have any evidence that one of the major reasons for that cutback was the suspicion that the Turtle Mountains contained a lot of coal, and they wanted to have the immigrants control that rather than the natives?
I don't. all resources, whether it's agricultural or timber or coal or oil, those are all speculative. And so really, if you read the congressional record on the formation of the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa, on there you'll see that it had more to do with limiting size and scope of the reservation, so that only the Indians that were not, quote, Canadian Indians were allowed to be residents of the reservation. So again, my husband's family are the Berseys, and prominently in that record, you'll see where they were evicted from the reservation because they were, quote, Canadian Indians, which meant Métis. So
Okay.
there was more of that type of activity occurring than probably a lot of the possibility of settlers, but it's all in the mix, So,
Forgive this question, but I'm always curious. Your husband, is he 1/8 Chippewa, 1/4, 1/16?
1/16.
1/16. Okay, thank you. So your children are 1/32.
Correct. And my daughter, who is a doctor of pharmacy, could not get a line of descendancy because the Little Shell Band wasn't in existence when she needed that to pay off her $200,000 in college debt. So there you go.
It's been a wide variety of conversation here. It's 3:17, 2:17, or 4:17, or 5:17, depending on where you are. Any further questions of Becky? Becky, this has been very, very well done. And thank you so much.
You.
Uh,
And
Jeff,
the other
Bernie,
thing,
Michael, Sharon, questions?
No, I've enjoyed her
Sybil,
talk a lot.
Sybil, you had anything?
How about Randy?
Okay. Okay. That sounds like Randy, Sybil.
I'm excited about thinking to spend a lot of time now this winter getting things organized, for our family and stuff. And I think the one I know the most is Bernie, I guess, and his grandmother and my mother were sisters, and they were a really close bunch of sisters. And
We're going to move into a new phase of our Zoom sessions in 2024, concentrating on the stories that individual families share about their own family. So Michael, the Beavers will have a session of their own. Bernie, the Bakkens will have a session of their own. Jeff, the Lars Gilgies will have a session of their own. Sharon, please forgive me, Sharon, I got to put you in, you're part of the Bakkens, that's right, the same thing.
we're the Bakkens.
Yeah, we'll have a session of their own. And we're going to prepare for that by helping you a little bit with a session in January that will kind of give you a feel for it. They'll be highly informal. You'll be able to just sit and chat about what you know, mixed in with as much factual data as you might have or can offer on sessions. So be prepared for a good session during 2024 and beyond. Further questions, comments?
Sounds good.
Becky, thank you again. You're a great asset, and really a very valuable. Very few people like Becky Leonard there are, and it really is a blessing to have you with your dedication. So
Thank
Jeff,
you so
Becky,
much.
Bernie, Michael, Sharon, Sybil, thank you all, and have a good day. And I apologize for what I can't control, and I'm sure sorry for screwing the thing up.
Blame the Zoom gods.
There we go.
I don't know if I'll ever figure out how to do this. But it sure has been
Everybody
fun.
have a good Thanksgiving.
We
Thank
will.
you.
Too.
Thank
You
you.
too.
Bye-bye, guys.
Thank you.